NBC's Ellison Barber is reporting from Tel Aviv. Also with us, Jamil Jaffer, founder and executive director of the National Security Institute and former counsel to both the House Intelligence and Senate Foreign Relations Committees. Thank you both for being here. Ellison, we understand the Israeli government is now telling people to stock up on food and water to prepare safe rooms at home. What's going on where you are?
Yeah, Chris, Israeli officials never really doubted that Iran would at some point do what they said. From the minute the supreme leader of Iran said, we believe since Ismail Haniyeh was killed in our territory and that they believed Israel was behind it, the second that he said we have no other choice but to take revenge for his death, Israeli officials had been saying consistently they expected Iran to follow through on that and to carry out what they were describing as likely a multi-day attack that also involved Iran's proxies. It fluctuated at different points on exactly when it could be, how big it could be, and whether or not Hezbollah in Lebanon would do something on their own or start it off, and then Iran would follow. But Israel has consistently said they believe that Iran will do something and that they think it will be bigger than the strikes they saw Iran carry out against Israel back in April. But towards kind of the middle and the end of last week, we had heard Iran sort of soften some of their rhetoric, at least publicly. That wasn't the case with Nasrallah and Hezbollah in Lebanon, but Iran did sort of kind of seem like they weren't as aggressively saying a strike is coming soon. Everything changed, though, when that school inside of Gaza, in the area of Gaza City, was struck by 3 different rockets. There are differing accounts of why that school was hit. Hamas and Gazan health officials, they say this was a school that had been turned into a refugee area, and over 4,000 people were displaced and seeking shelter there, and that those strikes occurred during morning prayers. Israel claims that this was an area, a school compound that was being used by Hamas as a command center, and that ultimately they claim they killed about 20 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists who they say were inside. Hamas denies that, so does Islamic Jihad, and about 100 people, according to Gazans civil defense, were killed in this strike. But it was that moment that we heard Israel go back in on their rhetoric. Almost immediately after that strike, a senior political advisor to Iran's supreme leader released a statement saying they viewed that strike as evidence that Israel was trying to ignite a larger regional war, and that they said they had already taken the necessary steps required to extract what they described as the harshest punishment on Israel. We know today Iran's president spoke with the Secretary of State from the Vatican and told him in that call, according to reporting in Iranian state media, that Iran does not want to go into a war, but that ultimately they believe, given the assassination that they say Israel was behind of Ismail Haniyeh, and also the killings, they say, of women and children inside of Gaza, that their only choice is to respond to that moving forward. We have spent time in the last week meeting with volunteer EMTs in Israel, and they tell us the thing they're most worried about right now is that a large-scale strike from Iran could target electrical infrastructure and send this country into darkness. They say they've staged pop-up areas in the event of a mass casualty event, but they're really concerned that the first thing that could go out, and that it could be days, would be communications within the country. Chris.
Ellison Barber, thank you for that. So, Jamil, what do you think Israel should be getting ready for?
Well, look, I think we have to expect, as Ellison says, a significant attack, either one from Hezbollah in the north, coming across in response to the killing of Fouad Shakur, one of their top military commanders, and or an Iranian response in the form of drone strikes, missile strikes, and the like, coming over from the mainland of Iran. Israel will almost certainly respond with a direct attack against Iran as well. But the question really is, how many Israelis will potentially lose their lives if Hezbollah comes across with those 150,000 rockets that we believe they have stored there just north of the Lebanon-Israel border? That, I think, is the biggest question. We know that Israel is at all-time lows when it comes to its air defense capabilities in terms of David Sling, Iron Dome, and the like in terms of those rockets. So that will be a challenge as well. The U.S. is continuing to resupply, but that'll be one of the big questions in play over the next few days.
Yeah, in addition to resupplying, as you know, Jamil, the Pentagon confirmed it's sending a guided missile submarine and another aircraft carrier strike group to the region. Does that change the calculation at all on either side?
Well, Chris, the question, I think, is what the Iranians read that the purpose of those vessels as being. In the past, the U.S. has used those vehicles to help shoot down and take down incoming Iranian missiles. It was a very effective effort that the Israelis, the U.S., and our NATO allies combined with against the last strikes. So the question now is, are they there for something more than that? I think it's highly unlikely the U.S. is looking to get into any kind of a shooting war with Iran unless this tips over into a major regional conflict, which at this point it hasn't. I think there's some possibility, but a small possibility that happens. I think more likely we'll see a response by Iran, a response by Israel, and then an effort to bring things to a more calm situation. Whether that can be done or not is the hard question, Chris.
So you think there could still be something that happens diplomatically? I mean, given, especially at least in the near term, that those ceasefire talks are set to resume Thursday, but Hamas isn't going.
Yeah, look, without Hamas there, it's hard to imagine how those things move forward. The real question is how to bring pressure on Iran. At the end of the day, Iran is the effort behind Hezbollah. They're the financial backers of Hamas. Unless Iran is held accountable for their bad behavior in the region, whether that's the Houthis in the Red Sea, Hezbollah in the north, or Hamas in Gaza, you're unlikely to see a larger resolution or return of those hostages who both Hamas and Iran see as their key negotiating leverage in this larger conflict.
Jamil Jaffer, always good to see you. Thank you.